Hello. I'm going to be talking today a little bit about the situation for foreigners at the moment in Colombia. This video has been prompted by what really is now becoming a serious vendetta of censorship against foreign writing about Colombia by so-called foreigners. I mean, I suppose I'm deemed to fall into that category, although I have to say that after 10 years in this country, becoming a resident and a citizen, I don't consider myself to be foreign here anymore. I was born in England, yes, that's true. However, I don't consider myself to be foreign when I've paid taxes in a country for 10 years, when all of my medical treatment has taken place in this country, when I go to mass twice a week in the local church, when I shop in my local village and attempt to support the economy and small businesses there, when almost all of my travel is national travel. I mean, I could go on, but I'm growing a little bit tired, actually, of me and people in similar situations to me that have been here for a very long time, particularly, now in the context of the pandemic, being, still branded, as these kind of foreigners that, we don't understand anything. We don't know how the culture works. We don't know what's, if we don't like it, we should just fuck off. And I think it's important to really explore a little bit as to the reasons for those attitudes from the government and from citizens within the country. And I think there are two main points I want to make here. As you know, I don't really kind of script these videos, so you have to bear with me a bit. But what I would say is that the 2 points I would make is firstly that I feel that the pandemic has massively increased tribalism, certainly within Colombia, although arguably outside of it. I mean, given that I haven't left Colombia since, October last year when I went to England for a few weeks in Spain, I don't really know what the situation's like in other places. However, I do watch the news, and it's very clear that there are lots of issues going on in the world to do with race, people feeling persecuted, people being, identity politics, all these kind of things. So everybody sort of seems now to be completely obsessed with categories rather than, what we share in common, which is that we're all human beings, whatever color our skin is, whatever kind of hair we've got, whether we're male, female, or anything in between, or, we are souls. We are souls inhabiting, physical vehicles in the form of bodies. And really, I think any surgeon will tell you that, if you cut open a body, or, we all look the same on the inside. So I've grown quite tired of being told, put into this box of I'm foreign, or I'm this, or I'm in this political area, or, no, I'm a human being. And at the moment, I live in Colombia, and I've lived here for a long time. And this leads me into my second point, which is that I think that Colombia is a country that is not accustomed in modern times to having foreign citizens. There's been so much violence and so much war here for so long that since the time of independence, the 1800s, there's been, almost no immigration to Colombia. The odd person dabbling in mining or something, and marrying a local woman and staying. But really, that's kind of it. And I think since in the last 10 years or so, there have been more foreigners coming here under the idea that things were becoming more peaceful in the country. And when you come to Colombia, as I did, as a traveller in 2010, I think I came for the first time, it's so easy to fall in love with Colombia. I mean, it's a beautiful country. The people are so friendly. The food is so fresh and so vibrant. The weather is so dramatic and inspiring. The old colonial architecture is something quite beautiful, even when it's in a state of decay, which unfortunately a lot of it is. And all of these elements add together. You know, you've got the sea, you've got inland, you've got mountains, you've got hot places, cold places. You know, in so many ways, Colombia has everything. But of course, you know, it's one thing coming somewhere for a couple of weeks and, you know, flopping around in your flip-flops and, you know, I don't know, getting drunk and, you know, dancing reggaeton for the first time and, you know, seeing bronzed, you know, Colombian men or women, if that's what you're interested in, you know. So it's very easy to fall in love with all of that. And in many ways, I am still in love with that. At least I do still see all of those things. But of course, someone like me or like some of my social circle here now, I mean, there's very relatively few of us that stayed in the pandemic, you know, 4 or 5 of us. People like me that, you know, have been here for a long time, of course, like anywhere, you know, like if you've been born in a country and lived there your whole life, you acquire other dimensions of understanding about that country. And so you no longer just see a pretty village or kind people. You see a lot of other things. You see a lot of trauma. You see a lot of barriers to progress. You see lack of education. You see you know, poor quality infrastructure in the majority of the country, or zero infrastructure in certain parts of the country. You see this simultaneous, oh, my dog wants to get involved. You see this this odd thing in Colombia, which for me is the presence. I've sometimes said this before, so other people may have heard me talk about this before. What I experience as the presence of simultaneously too much and too little state. So, you know, loads of army, loads of police, you know, in certain places where really there isn't really any need for it. And then you have areas of the country where people are just abandoned and just left to be murdered. I mean, you know, I don't know how else to put it, quite frankly. You know, armed groups, nobody knows who they belong to. You know, some people are saying they're even part of the state. Some people are saying that's ridiculous. You know, we just need more state, you know, to get rid of these nasty people. People saying, oh, it's just drugs, and then, you know, where to start. But anyway, my point is that this country is not accustomed, at least in modern times, to having immigration. And I think that means that they're not used to having people like me or like some of my friends that write or involved in politics actually speaking out. And this is an attitude that actually goes back again to the times of independence. And anyone that follows me on Instagram will notice that a few weeks ago I actually did a post because a friend of mine who lives in Monpós, I won't mention him in this video, so I don't know if he'd want his name directly being mentioned, but, you know, he lives in Monpós, and he was doing a bit of research, and he came across a person who I've been interested in for a long time, who was the British consul to Colombia during the times of independence, James Henderson. And anyway, he and in fact many other people ended up being expelled from Colombia because Bolívar, who was the dictator at the time, deemed that foreign interference, you know, was a problem. Now, of course, he didn't deem it to be a problem that actually it was him that had brought mercenaries into the country to actually get rid of the Spanish. And in fact, you know, I'm overgeneralizing here, but mainly the Irish mercenaries kind of ended up sort of siding more with Bolívar once they'd spent time in the country. And the English tended to, you know, go more towards the Santander way of thinking about things. And they were persecuted, and many of them ended up leaving. So in a way, I think some of us, we're now feeling oddly like we're reliving the experiences of these early migrants to Colombia in the 1800s, in that it's okay to come here and say everything's great and everything's beautiful and isn't everything pretty and, you know, just drink the soup and everything. But it's not okay to say, you know, yeah, but this bit needs a bit of work. Oh, this is a problem. This isn't fair. This doesn't seem just. You know, I'd like my taxes to be spent on infrastructure, please. And I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that, yeah, people in Colombia are just, you know, for the most part, not really used to having foreigners. They don't really know how to make sense of them in the society. And so it's okay. And in fact, it's great to be a foreigner here as long as you're just a traveler and you're just, you know, spending a bit of money and you're just saying, oh, everything's fine. But as soon as you start becoming a citizen that is so in love with your country that you actually want to contribute in a meaningful way to that society, however you deem it possible for you to do that, that's then a problem. You know, that then you're stepping over the line. Then you ought to go home to where you came from. Well, you know, coming from England, a country where we've been very comfortable with immigration for a very long period of time, and in fact, I think almost all of my closest friends in England have been people that were not born in England. For me to hear phrases like, you know, if you don't like it, fuck off, you know, go back to where you came from. That is a shocking thing to say to somebody. And in England, that would be deemed, you know, completely unacceptable and something you might even, you know, go to the police about. Whereas here, it's just, you know, fine. It's just, you know, I actually saw a post recently on Twitter. Somebody, you know, actually put a post and they, with a picture of the airport in Bogota. And they said, you know, if you don't like things here, there's the airport. Well, you know, that's one attitude. But what I would say is that the importance of people coming with different perspectives on things in life is invaluable. You don't have to agree with everything someone else says, but it can be extremely meaningful and useful to hear the viewpoints of other people, wherever they come from, whether they come from within the society or whether they are new to the society. You know, I mean, to give you an easy example, you know, if it wasn't for foreigners, you wouldn't have, you know, pizza restaurants in Colombia. You know, it's as simple as that. You know, people have traveled all over the world, taking the most beautiful parts of different cultures with them, and they have transformed and fused into new and other things. And I think simply having the idea that, you know, if you're not born here and you don't look like everyone else and you don't use exactly the same turns of phrase as everyone else, then you should just fuck off, is quite frankly ultimately, you know, total racism and xenophobia. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. And Adrian mentions in his article, again, I will put the link below, that you know, the government blocking visas or creating new bureaucracy so that people can't write from within the country, you know, saying they need a journalism degree, which, you know, in a lot of countries doesn't even exist, and yada, yada, yada. You know, this doesn't serve Colombia in the long term. I mean, look what happened to Venezuela when it became impossible for particularly foreign journalists to write about the country. You know, obviously they just go and they move on with their lives, but the country is left with no opposition. Nobody apart from the propaganda machine to talk about what's going on in the country. Outside voices are crucial in journalism and in everything. And, you know, of course, then the next step was that people in Venezuela that were critical of the government also had to leave, also had to flee. So, you know, it's a slippery slope. You know, you might think you're just getting rid of a few foreigners and you might just want to say, oh, they're troublemakers, you know. But ultimately, the next people that will go will be Colombians that are also writing anything critical. And in fact, most of those have already gone anyway. We know, you know, they're all in Miami or New York. You know, most people writing about Colombia that, you know, want to say anything meaningful end up having to live in exile, you know, including Gabriel Garcia Marquez. You know, it's you know, this is not a new problem, but there's a new nastiness to this whole situation. One feels that the tone has changed. You know, people like me and others are experiencing censorship in new ways, and that's a very serious issue. So I'm making this video to highlight that. And I guess what I want to leave you with is what I consider to be something quite positive, which is that I wouldn't expect an immigrant living in Colombia to not care about the society. I think that caring about the society you live in, falling in love with its people, demands that sooner or later you develop your own conscience about what's going on. And I think simply saying nothing is not a form of loving Colombia. I think loving Colombia or a person or anything else involves being brave, involves being honest, and it involves being authentic, and just flopping around, you know, saying everything's great. I don't consider that to be love, actually. I consider that to be a trance. So I will shut up now and Please take care. Bye bye.